In the Shadow of the Valley by Maggot Mosh Pit. Chapter 8. Tezar marched steadily in front of the remaining troops, making a beeline for the basin, which was a shallow valley with a lake at its center. A community of monks had set themselves up there in an old fort, and were feeding off the abundance of fish in the lake. According to the information on Farrell's scroll, Captain Stonewall, as he was fondly referred to as, had laid siege to the community a week or so prior. Tezar pushed through the trees and kept her eyes forward. She spotted something darting between the trees, and before she could reach for her sword, Farrell popped up next to her.
LaRoche's beard! Don't sneak up on me like that!
Farrell looked slightly deflated, but he bowed and made his report.
Sorry, sir. Stonewall told me to deliver this message. We indeed are about to break the siege, but we could use some help building a tower for the final assault. Do this for us and we'll follow you. Of course, you'll probably order us to, but it's nice to dream. He then burst out laughing and sent me away. Oh, he also told me to pass on his condolences.
Tezar and Farrell walked through the woods, the occasional pixie flitting lazily by.
Run back and tell him we agree, of course. Then find Ziff and inform him of our status. By then, we will probably be there. And one more thing, don't tell every person you meet about Okara.
Farrell gulped and nodded, then hung back to get some food and drink from their supplies. Tezar sighed, wondering how long she could keep fighting. She estimated 4 months, but she did not know. Stonewall was massive. Built exactly as his nickname suggested, he was probably the strongest caracal serving in the army. He had handsome, chiseled features and deep blue eyes. As the first sun sank low to the north, Stonewall was overseeing the construction of a great siege tower that was to be used against the tall and sturdy walls that protected the monks. The tower looked odd, most of it being made of metal in the form of shields that were fastened to the front. The rest was a framework of thick boards cut from the nearby forest. One group of carpenters worked tirelessly, fitting the top third of the tower, while the others constructed the ladder that would be nailed to the outside. Stonewall grinned, turning to the fort that sat a few hundred meters away. It was indeed old, but strong and teeming with monks who did not take very kindly to being attacked. Stonewall strode across the burned grass, where, a few days ago, the monks had tried hurling fire bales at them. They had only succeeded in starting a superficial grass fire, but Stonewall had to admit, for such strange creatures, they put up one hell of a fight. Arriving at the site of the tower construction, Stonewall flicked the ear of a cat who was crouching over a sheet of bark paper.
Tur!
He stood up quickly and threw a salute.
Yes, sir.
How's it coming?
Good, sir. The wheels are almost in place, and the top is nearly complete.
Stonewall looked into the forest, waiting on Farrell's return.
All right. This time put the wheels on right. We don't want an encore of your last performance.
Yes, sir. Quite an undesirable outcome.
I'll say. Back to work!
Tur nodded quickly and dropped back to his knees, scribbling with a twig onto the parchment. Stonewall continued walking to the right where his army camped. He strode into the lower area and among the few tents, glancing once at the woods before he ducked into his tent. His second-hand woman Leol sat inside, reading a book.
What are you doing?
Reading?
Stonewall chuckled and sat next to her on the bench.
Right. Instead of combat drills.
The troops have had enough drills for this. What's so hard about it anyway? Climb a ladder and kill some monks?
You're right. I am restless is all.
Leol placed the book down and smiled sultrily, trailing her claw up his arm.
Let's get some rest, then.
He brushed her paw aside.
Not now. I'm waiting for a runner. He will arrive soon.
She picked the book back up and continued reading.
You truly are a stone wall.
He shrugged.
I don't see the point of this siege. What do we gain from it?
A fort, tons of fish, and most importantly, pride.
Stonewall scoffed.
Pride in an empty sack is worth the sack.
She cuffed his ear.
If the higher-ups want it, it shall be done.
Oh, I'm more than happy to do the task. But do you not think our time and energy could be more useful at Arden?
They have enough troops for that. All you need is a few skilled archers, a good commander, and there it is. Almost zero casualty ambush.
Stonewall shifted uncomfortably on the small bench.
I know. It would just be more fun.
Leol laughed just as Farrell entered the tent. Smiling, Stonewall gestured to him.
See?
Stonewall stood and clapped Farrell on the shoulder.
Farrell, meet my mate, the perilous beauty Leol.
Farrell bowed respectfully and turned to Stonewall.
Sir, Tezar will arrive shortly. She agrees to your terms.
Good. Come, dine with me.
Farrell's stomach growled, even as he answered.
No, thank you, sir. I have more running to do.
Stonewall spread his arms and nodded.
Of course. Go on then. But grab something to eat on your way.
Farrell bowed again and dashed off to report to Ziff. Stonewall heard a book closing, then an annoyed sigh.
Why did you have to invite him to dinner? I was afraid he'd say yes.
I knew he wouldn't. Now, what do you say we waste some time?
A sudden noise woke Marten from his half-conscious state, causing him to blink and look around in confusion.
Oh, Marten, you're up.
I wasn't asleep.
Niv giggled.
Of course you weren't. Come on, it's time to go.
Bronze was packing a bag of provisions, and Kethresh was sharpening her sword.
What was that sound?
Niv shrugged from where she was sitting.
I don't know. Something Arbalest was fiddling with.
Marten stood and walked curiously over to where Arbalest was. He was looking intently at the bent piece of wood he had retrieved from Pill's dwelling.
What are you doing with that thing?
He looked up distractedly.
Oh, look at this.
He indicated a component Marten's eye had missed upon his first inspection of the object.
What is it?
I have no idea, but look. See this metal plate?
Marten nodded as Arbalest pulled back the contraption with his thumb from where it rested against another, identical contraption. There was a click, and Arbalest grinned.
Look, when I press this lever...
Arbalest pressed on a tiny lever that was hidden on the underside of the stick, and the thing sprang to life. With a snap and a crack, the hammer-shaped component struck its twin and produced sparks, which fell onto the metal plate before fizzling out. Marten nodded.
Looks like a fire starter to me. Those are sparking rocks on that thing.
Arbalest nodded, but looked pensive.
I don't know. The paper that came with it says it's a weapon. That's all I could decipher.
Marten shrugged.
I have no idea.
Niv tapped them both on the shoulder.
Are you done over there? We have to go. It's dark out and we'll have the perfect cover.
Arbalest tucked the stick into his cloak and picked up his stolen crossbow. It had only one bolt, which Arbalest had removed and also placed into his cloak. Marten rubbed his eyes once and turned to the rest of the party.
All right. Where are we going anyway?
To the monastery. Come. If we get there before the sun rises, we can slip in undetected.
Kethresh stopped her before she could slip out into the passage.
Wait. Slip in unnoticed?
Yes. Our home is under siege by felines.
Marten shook his head.
What? Why didn't you tell us sooner?
She smiled guiltily.
Because I was afraid you would say something like that.
Arbalest stood beside Niv.
Afraid of some felines, Marten?
Yes.
Niv held up her paws.
I wouldn't have come find you if it would bring you harm. You will be well taken care of, and no feline will lay a finger on you.
Marten glanced at Bronze.
What do you think?
It's up to you.
I don't know. It sounds too dangerous, but... Arbalest, why are you so eager to go?
Felines are there.
That's not the only reason.
Arbalest looked slightly pained, and suddenly took Marten by the arm, pulling him out through the passage.
I'm going to borrow Marten for a moment.
Out in the large chamber, Marten shook Arbalest off his arm.
All right. What is it?
Arbalest clasped the bridge of his muzzle for a short second before speaking.
Well, it's about what Niv said to me.
What was it?
Never mind what it was. The point is that there's only two people who know. One's dead. There's no way she could know that.
So, what you're saying is her mate is the real deal.
Yes, he is a seer, Marten. If he wants to speak to you, it must be important and 100% correct.
Marten detected something approaching fear on Arbalest's face, something that did not fit the merciless feline killer. Marten nodded solemnly.
All right, we'll go.
Arbalest called back.
Come on, we're losing the night.
The rest emerged from the illusory wall, Kethresh shouldering a pack of food.
Arbalest, Marten, if you get me killed, I'll haunt you.
Don't fret. You'll be fine. Come on.
Zip was on watch for that night, for he had the best night vision of the three. He watched the caves, thinking about his mate. He had told her that he would be back very soon, maybe a day, and he had been gone much longer. His brothers were not mated to anyone, so they did not have to worry, but he would have to face the woman's wrath. He was snapped from his ruminations when shadows began to move out of the cave. He quickly tapped both his brothers, who rose. Silently, they stalked through the woods, keeping the shadows to their right. Soon, it became apparent where they were headed. Ziph hissed.
You see where they go?
Zik nodded, and Zip responded in a low tone.
The basin.
Ziph smiled.
If that fifth figure was a monk, then they're being led right into a battlefield. Right where we want them.
All three brothers whispered in unison. After an hour of tracking through the dark and catching inaudible scraps of conversation from their targets, Farl appeared out of nowhere. Ziph silenced him by grabbing his muzzle. He pointed to Marten and his band as they slowly walked through the woods. Farl nodded, and Ziph released him slowly. Farl's voice was barely understandable, it was so low.
Sirs, by now Tezar has reached the fort. She is helping Stonewall in exchange for his help.
Ziph shook his head.
Forget that. Listen, they're going to the fort already. Tell Tezar and Stonewall to set up an ambush along the plains on the west side of the basin. Disguise the men as bushes. In the dark, it will be impossible to see much. Fly!
Farl nodded and dashed off through the woods doggedly. The runner had been dashing back and forth all day. Luckily, he was well trained, and he paced himself. It was almost pitch black by the time he ran out upon the plains surrounding the fort. He ran into the camp, panting heavily. He dragged himself towards Stonewall's tent, seeing the torches still lit. He recognized a few passers-by from the original detachment sent to find Marten. As he drew nearer, Tezar grabbed his shoulders from behind and spun him.
Farl, there you are. I was beginning to worry.
Farl grabbed her arm.
I must see Stonewall.
Tezar chuckled and led him towards the long dining tent.
No one's going to see Stonewall until morning.
But the torches are lit.
Tezar pushed into the tent and sat him down next to a few late eaters. She took a seat across from him.
Tell me instead. I'm in charge at the moment, until Stonewall is not otherwise engaged.
Farl nodded, not giving it a second thought.
All right.
He slurped some water from a jug and made his report.
The blacksmith and his bunch are coming this way.
What?
A couple soldiers looked up at the commotion, sensing something was about to happen. Farl continued.
It seems like he's joined up with the monk from the fort, and now they're coming here.
Tezar shot up.
You lot, wake your comrades, get battle ready. But not too ready. This is to be a clean capture operation. No killing!
The soldiers ambled out the door as Farl frowned.
I thought we only didn't have to kill the wolf.
In this darkness, it's almost impossible to tell who's who. Go on. Tell me more.
Farl drank more water, then continued.
They'll be coming from the west side of the plain, from the forest. Ziph says we should dress up like bushes and hide. An ambush, of course.
Tezar nodded.
That's what I would do. Good work, Farl. Get some sleep and we'll deal with this.
She turned to the exit and strode out. Farl looked at the water jug, then let his head drop to the table, passing out. Tezar was impressed at the speed at which the soldiers formed up. Stonewall had commanded them well, it seemed. She addressed them.
All right, listen up, people. We've got an escaped prisoner and a couple of homeless wanderers heading this way. All you need to do is capture them alive. All 5 of them.
There was a generally confident response, if a little unenthusiastic. She detailed her plan.
If they see us, they'll turn tail and run, forcing us to chase them endlessly into the forest. We will set up an ambush and capture them in one swift movement. Be careful, though. Do not underestimate these scum. They have killed a few of us already.
She paused for effect before launching into the exact details of the plan. Atria's only visible moon shone dimly through the thick clouds, disappearing for long moments on end. Niv pushed through the trees and sighed contently as she came out into the rough grass at the edge of the forest. Marten pushed through after her.
Glad to get out of that forest and into the plain.
Arbalest stepped out next.
I don't know. In open fields, I always get the feeling that someone's watching you.
Niv strode confidently out into the plain as Bronze and Kethresh joined them. Kethresh ran to catch up with Niv.
Slow down! This is enemy territory. There could be felines around.
She smiled and continued walking.
Lynn said that we would come to no harm, so it shall be.
Did he say we wouldn't run into any felines?
Niv stopped, unsure.
Well, he didn't say that exactly.
Kethresh cast her gaze around the field. She gestured to Bronze.
Look.
Yes, I see them.
Niv looked around in confusion, an audible degree of fear entering her voice.
What? What is it? Tell me.
Kethresh pointed towards a patch of bushes. In the dark, they looked like a bunch of lumps, but they were clearly bushes.
Those are not bushes. I think something else is going on.
Niv looked at the bushes, not seeing how they could be anything else.
How can you tell?
I have some experience dealing with felines. Sometimes they disguise themselves in the dark. They're very good at it.
Bronze chuckled.
I was going to say that type of bush usually grows very close to other bushes of its kind. Those are spread out.
Kethresh nodded.
That too.
Niv suddenly looked terrified. So much so, Arbalest noticed, and gave her a reassuring smile.
Don't worry, Niv. I already have a plan.
Tezar crouched with the rest of the soldiers, covered in a specially woven mat of leafy branches. She looked exactly like a snowdrop berry bush, minus the berries. Next to her was a cat, dressed in the same camouflage. From where they were, none of the soldiers could see Marten and his group. Tezar whispered.
It's only a matter of time before they show themselves.
The cat, whose name was Silverchase, nodded in agreement. He was the same rank as Tezar and served directly under Stonewall.
I've always wanted to pull this trick. Never a chance with the sage and all.
Further conversation was cut short by the appearance of a bright flickering dot near the edge of the trees. Tezar studied it.
A fire?
Aye, looks like it.
Stay here.
Tezar slipped out from her cover and lay flat on the ground. She inched across the field towards the fire, getting as close as she dared before stopping and watching intently. Around the fire sat 5 figures. 2 seemed to be asleep, covered in blankets, while the other 3 sat still as stones. Tezar was still too far away to see much, but she couldn't get any closer, so she crawled back to Silverchase.
They've built a fire, and they're sitting around it. What now?
I don't know.
Tezar thought for a moment.
Okay, I have it. If we stay out here all night, most of our men will be asleep, so we must act. A 3-pronged pincher attack. It will be simple, quick, and clean. Spread the word, get the men formed up, leave a couple of soldiers behind, just in case.
Silverchase nodded, then disappeared into the dark. A half hour passed, and Silverchase returned.
All is ready.
Tezar nodded.
You command the center group. I have the left. Do you have someone for the right?
Yes, the signal to begin is an ace-fly chirp.
Tezar stalked off to the left. She found her group of 5 soldiers crouching in their cover.
Lose the cover. Their backs are turned. Be ready.
The field was full of insect chirping and clicking, and to the unskilled observer, it was all random noise. So only a few would know that the ace fly only chirped in the summer month, and not in the dead of winter. Silverchase cupped his paws around his mouth, holding a leaf to his lips. He blew and produced a high-pitched chirp, signaling the attack. Moving slowly, the three groups circled around, cutting off any means of escape for those around the small fire. Silverchase was the first to reach it, and he crouched only a foot away, watching the other soldiers create a ring around the fire. He stood and sauntered into the firelight, grabbing at the neck of the closest figure.
Got you?
The rock fell to the ground from where it had been balanced atop a larger, torso-shaped rock, which was covered in a cloak. The last thing that went through Silverchase's head was a well-aimed shot from Arbalest's crossbow. Pandemonium broke out as one of the soldiers screamed, "We're under attack!" at the top of his lungs. Some soldiers scattered, but most stormed the campsite in an attempt to capture the assailant. Most did not see what had occurred, so they assumed the people around the fire had done the attacking. Tezar and her 5 soldiers saw the bolt fly in over their heads and impale Silverchase. As most of the soldiers yelled and scattered the fire, Tezar led her team in the direction of the sniper.
Fools! Come, let's do the real work.
Arbalest was running as soon as he had fired, for even if he had missed, there was no second bolt for him to fire. He tapped Marten on the head as he passed, and the rest stood and ran flat out towards the fort. Marten was at the rear of the group, so he glanced back, only to see Tezar dashing after him, a fire in her eyes that could be seen even in the dark. Marten sped up.
Game's up! Go faster! Faster!
Arbalest slowed down rather than sped up. Tezar was very close behind him, her claws outstretched. Suddenly, he stopped and braced himself, the butt of his crossbow held out. Tezar had no time to even slow herself as she ran straight into the crossbow butt, getting hit in the chest hard. She collapsed onto her back, severely winded. The next soldier came at Arbalest, so he tossed the crossbow to him, causing him to instinctively catch it. Seeing the bewildered soldier's 4 comrades coming in fast behind him, Arbalest beat a quick retreat. The soldier tossed the crossbow aside and crouched beside Tezar, the rest blowing by, fast as the wind.
Sir, are you...
Tezar pushed him aside as she tried to stand, coughing and gasping for air. Marten had reached the front gate, to find it ajar. Monks crouched inside, longbows poised. One yelled,
Get inside!
Marten darted inside, followed by Kthresh, Bronze, and Niv. The monks began to shut the door, but Niv stopped them.
Wait, Arbalest!
The 4 soldiers were hot on his tail. One grabbed onto his cloak, but with a quick movement Arbalest shed the garment, entangling the soldier. He jumped through the gate, rolling to one side as 2 of the soldiers were faced by a hail of arrows. The third stumbled to a stop as his 2 comrades fell dead. The door slammed, and the night became utterly still. Tezar stumbled up to the door, banging her sword against it in a futile gesture. The 2 remaining soldiers were forced to drag her away before the monks could get archers on the battlements. Inside, Marten picked himself up from where he had tripped, looking around. Niv looked around as well, until she spotted a robed monk with an ornate insect shell brooch.
Lynn!
She ran to him and wrapped herself around his waist. Lynn was very tall, his eyes yellow. As Marten stepped closer, he noticed a peculiar quality in Lynn's eyes. Sometimes, though Marten thought it was only his imagination, a mist seemed to pass, just barely visible, behind his eyes. Lynn stroked Niv's head as he hugged her.
Oh, Niv, I'm sorry. I should not have allowed you to go alone.
She pushed back and punched him, then pulled his face down, kissing him in the same motion.
Damn right you shouldn't have.
I said sorry.
Niv pointed to the 4 visitors.
I brought them just like you asked.
He nodded and approached the travelers.
Welcome to our home. I am Lynn. I have something to show you, Marten.
He motioned to the building, which sat at the fort's center.
But first, you must be tired. Come, rest. In the morning, we will speak.
The regent, despite the beginnings of his plan working wonderfully, was in a fit of rage. He vented to Redrick, who stood as one might if they were under a waterfall.
Go out, track a blacksmith, bring him back! How hard is that? It has been days! I want my blacksmith back, damn it!
Redrick fiddled with his shirt, unsure of what to do. Joe slammed his fist onto the table, causing a jug of wine to spill. He stalked over to the window and growled.
Clean that up!
Yes, Regent.
Redrick quickly soaked up the liquid with a rag. The Regent walked over to the table and tugged savagely on Redrick's large ear.
Get out! I need to think.
He pushed Redrick as he quickly scuttled out the door. Joe returned to the window and watched as the canines set up the festival for the Day of Flames. He hated to have to let them celebrate, but soon he would clear his name in the eyes of the canines and gain their favor.
If only those useless tracker brothers returned.